Howdy folks, hopefully we're all doing spectacular, and welcome in to a official Overwatch Season 1 Hero Tier List. Now, before we do get into it, we are going to have a few disclaimers. Firstly, there are going to be some placements on this list that I can guarantee some people aren't going to like. However, that will probably be a case of me understanding how to play a certain character in a different way, which isn't going to make sense right now, but when we do get to those characters, my explanation should, field the park a little bit more. And secondly, is that I am not a top 500 player. I am typically high plat, low diamond. This season, my placements were all plat. However, in my defense, Blizzard can't exactly, add 5 new characters and expect me not to exclusively play them in my placements. It's a given, And in saying that, within the new season, there is definitely some roles that I have played substantially more than others. I am a former tank main. However, this season and last season, I have played substantially less for reasons we'll get into. But with all the yap out of the way, without further ado, let's dive straight in with D.Va, who is going into A tier. Now, D.Va is very solid. She not always has been, but especially the last few seasons has been consistently very good. When Overwatch swapped from being 6v6 to 5v5, D.Va has kind of always felt like she's been in a state where either she's been really strong or not very good. Somewhat similar to Roadhog in the sense that their kits make far more sense in a situation where you have, an on-tank and an off-tank, whereas now you just kind of have the one tank who not necessarily dictates how the game is played, but has an impact on the general composition or positions. And D.Va, of all the tanks, is in my opinion the best in Season 1. And some people are going to be thinking about this certain pink-haired lady and thinking, surely she's going to be the best. We'll get to her in a minute. Domina, I'm going into A below D.Va. When Domina first released, I was with everyone else. I thought she was broken. I mean, if I can play the first game as her and go 43 and 5, I think it was. If I still have the screenshot, I'll pop it up now. But then you kind of play with her and other people play against her. Sure, she's banned quite a lot of the time, but that is, again, partially because she is new and people aren't too used to playing against her. She doesn't have a lot of movement, so if you can get her in a position to die, she will die, unlike, say, D.Va or Doom or Ball or Hazard, who have, ways to get out of it. Domina is what I would call a main tank, with main tanks being tanks that sort of play with the team and play around the team, or, if you want to call it the other way, the team plays around them. Domina's a threat whilst she's with the whole team, but the second you can isolate her, knock her out of position, or even just shred her down, she's strong, but she isn't like a certain individual when he first released. Next up, we're going to go on to Doomfist, and Doom and Ball are going to be the only two I'm going to rank at the same time, because my stance on Doom and Ball will always stay the same. With that being, with Doomfist and Ball, it doesn't really matter the changes that you make to them as heroes. They're both as good as the person playing them. A very good Wrecking Ball is just a demon, as, is a very good Doomfist. But equally, in the hands of someone that's a bit of a numpty, they're really not great. However, the other benefit that they offer, and something that a lot of the older tanks are lacking, is that survivability. Some people may put them in C tier. For me, that is why they're B. Next up, Hazard. Very top of B tier. I am so tempted to put him into A. He has such a strong kit. You can do so much with him. However, because of how strong other characters are, I don't really feel Hazard has a chance to thrive. Hazard will be strong when dive characters are strong, and at the minute, dive characters aren't really too hot, which is why I'm putting in B. Though with that being said, the not just skill ceiling with Hazard, but the carry potential from playing Hazard is, astronomical in comparison to most of the other tanks on the list, specifically the carry potential. Because Hazard actually feels like you can do something on tank. Same with D.Va. Partially with Domina, but at the same time, it does feel a little pincushiony. Like you're just, just there to sit there and, have people look at you and shoot you. Next up, we have Junker Queen, who is painfully, for me, going into C tier. Junker Queen kind of suffers from having to be up close and personal to do her damage, but lacking the mobility needed, especially with the sort of design orientation for the recent additions to the Overwatch roster. And what I mean by that is that pretty much every new character that they've released since, Junker Queen has had a way to get away, or has had some very good mobility that they can use to disengage from, being in the front line to going back to the back line. And for characters like Junker Queen, who rely on being up close and personal to be doing significant damage, that she kind of just suffers with. And I also don't think they can really do anything to help with that without significantly changing her as a character, her fundamentals. I personally really like Junker Queen, but I do think that she suffers from, now probably over half the roster having a very simple way to just get out of her range, which is why, unfortunately, she's going into C tier. Mauga. When he first came out, everyone had nightmares about him just sitting there going, ha ha! That was terrible, I apologise. However, now, I'm putting him below Junker Queen into C tier. Honestly, I think Mauga is one of the characters that just needs to be sacked off. Kill him off. I was going to say within a cinematic, but frankly, off-screen him. I genuinely do not care enough about him as a character to want to see him death, or for him to even have an honourable death. Like Reinhardt, for example. If he was ever getting removed, I would be expecting honour and glory levels of, peak to actually say farewell to the character. Mauga, you could put him on a boat to Puerto Rico or wherever you want to send him. I don't care about the details. Sack him off. Mauga is pretty much you walk out and you shoot their tank. That is pretty much Mauga. The only saving grace that Mauga gets is if they have a Pharah and D.Va's banned, you can just pick her off as Mauga because you are hit scam. Aside of that, you're pretty much just shooting the tank and being a bit of a pain. He's not fun to play against. I don't find him particularly fun to play as, and it doesn't really feel like you're doing anything. And that's partially because Blizzard nerfed him into the ground, or had to nerf him into the ground, because he was a menace when he came out. Now, he's not too great. And again, there are a lot of situations where he's viable. Pretty much, if they don't have a shield, you can just sit there and do that, and you're right. But aside from that, he's pretty cheeks, to be honest with you. Orisa. See, I've got mixed feelings about Orisa, and this is one of the few times where I let you call some bias. I have been enjoying playing her a lot more recently, and I think I'm going to throw it into B. Oh, below Doom and Ball. My qualms with Orisa have always been the correct way to play Orisa is basically just to be a warden. A Moira's going for a coalescence. No, you don't, love. No, you don't. A Sigma's going for a flux. Not today, pal. Not today. You are pretty much just a sponge whose job is to prevent the enemy team from making plays so that your team can make plays. And while she is pretty good at it, I don't think it's particularly fun to play against. In fact, Orisa is probably on this list my least favourite hero to second least favourite hero to play against. However, with that being said, I can't deny that she is pretty decent. That's why I'm putting her in B. Very solid option, just not the best considering the other tanks that are in A. And now we move on to my boy Ramatra. And, there's no F tier on this tier list because I don't believe any character on this list at current to be unplayable. But if anyone on this list was close enough to going into it, it would unfortunately be my boy Ramatra. He's just pretty cheeks at the minute. As much as I hate to say it, he just is. And that's for two reasons. Firstly, the DPS that are very good at current, and secondly, again, like Junker Queen, the way that you get your big value is with your punches. And at the minute, so many people have easy ways to just get out of your effective range that you're not going to really do much in your Nemesis form until their team push in. But if the team are pushing in, they've either got an ult that's, going to carry them through the fight, or at least initiate the first part of the team fight, or they, have a way to deal with you. Ramatra's saving grace is Annihilation, not necessarily because it's good, because it's kind of fallen off a bit, more because for some reason people from silver to plat here suffer as I have, and the brain just turns off or something. I don't quite get it. I don't, because the thing is, as much as it sucks as a tank player to admit, at the minute turning around and shooting the tank is just the most effective strategy in team fights. And when he does that, he's basically putting a neon sign on his forehead saying, "Oi, shoot me." Yeah, on the whole, just not great. Now Reinhardt, this is going to be a bit of a curveball. However, Ryan's going into B. Now, if Junker Queen and Malga weren't in C tier, then Ryan would be in C tier. However, seeing as they are, I don't think Ryan is on that level of tank. Ryan's always been a pub stomper at low ranks. However, I've also been watching some, we're not talking OWCS here, because who's playing Ryan in that? But there are some instances at higher level where Ryan is working. And, I'm going to hold my hands high. If there was a single tank on this list that I would tell you, do not, disregard every single thing I do on that tank, it would be Ryan. Because, frankly, I do just sit there and think, I have Big Hammer, me swing it. But from having played him, the new minor perk that he has where he activates his health regen when he lifts up his barrier, game-changing for him. He's still not good, but is far more effective than JQ or Rammy Boy. Next up, my boy Roadhog. Hog's somewhat of a sleeper pick, in my personal opinion. Hog isn't necessarily good because of his one shot. He's also not necessarily good because you can reposition them. It's a combination of the two. I saw some Rivals players coming into Overwatch with the new season complaining about the fact that, they can't just walk into 10 people and live. The biggest difference between Rivals and Overwatch from someone that's played both is that you actually have to think about positioning. Rivals, all 5 of you can just walk into the other 5. You can sit there and make out for 30 minutes on the objective and no one's going to die until you start popping stuff. Overwatch, if one of your teammates is in a bad position, that's a wrap for them. They're just dead. And Hog has the ability to forcibly reposition them. Now, again, yes, so many characters with mobility to get away. But for the initial, 0.5 seconds, they can't. And because of that, if a couple of your teammates have a few brain cells shared between them, they just shoot them a couple of times, you shoot them, you're cushy, brave. I'm currently editing this, and there was another point here, but I didn't think I explained it particularly well. Essentially, Season 1 saw a change where all damage now gives the negating X% of healing. I want to say 20 to 30% for DPS to support, and 15% for tank, which is a pretty big nerf to Hog's Take a Breather. So for that reason, I'm putting Hog top of C. Sigma is going into B tier below Hazard for one simple reason. Zarya is really strong and Symmetra is very, very strong, which usually isn't great for Sigma because anyone with a beam does well. Then you add Domina as well on top of that, the new hero. And then you add the fact that, you've got the cat who's just kind of a pest to play against with Sigma because you can't really hit him. And then you pair that with, the amount of abilities going on. The thing with Sigma is to play him effectively, you need to be managing your cooldowns. And that kind of generically applies to every character in the game, but especially to Sigma. I mean, I know they said Ram was the first tempo tank, but from my perspective at least, Sig has always been a tempo tank because you need to control the tempo of the fight in order to win it with Sigma. You need to use your barrier with, you know, certain timings. You also need to use your grasp at the perfect moment within the fight, because if you use that incorrectly, you're knackered. Same with accretion or rock. But I feel like with the new additions, with who's strong at the minute, with, you know, just all of that, I personally feel like Sigma's in B tier currently. And usually he has, you know, consistently been one of the stronger tanks in the game. He still is quite a strong tank, but I think he's been knocked down a few pegs. Next up, Wonton. Going into A, which will surprise a few people, I know, especially considering my prior points about the, you know, the DPS and what playing tank is like at the minute, a pincushion. However, come here. I'm gonna let you in on a little something. They added a perk that gives him 10% movement when hitting an enemy with his not particle cannon, Tesla cannon. There we go. 10% movement speed when hitting people with his Tesla cannon, up to 30%. Last season before, Juno could just fly away. Now, I feel like Bartholomew Henry Allen. Effectively, Winston's become far better at diving into the backline and actually getting the pick, because even though they have that mobility now, Winston also has mobility. And it's not even a case of, you know, if they're fast enough to get away, because for some reason you are now speed incarnate fast enough to keep up. Like Wu Yang with his wave. Not getting away from me anymore, buddy. Weaver with his dash. You're going nowhere, sunshine. She's going wherever she pleases. But, you know, you get the general idea. Winston's pretty much the GOAT now for diving their supports. And I'm going to be honest, I've also just been having a crap load of fun on him. So again, I will let you call a little bit of bias here. But from the however much time I've played as him this season, he feels really good. And bear in mind that he's also somewhat comparatively, but of the tanks, he feels like he's very good. He's very efficient at what he's designed to do, which is to dive. W Winston. And then we have the strong Russian lady who I'm putting second at the top of A. Zarya is incredibly strong at the minute. I do not, however, think she's better than Diva, which is going to flabbergast a few people. But that's to do with one character that we'll be getting to very shortly. If I sat here and told you she, you know, wasn't as strong as people think she is, I'd be lying. However, coincidentally, the people that do well against Zarya are also pretty damn strong at the minute. And while she is very strong, yes, in the tank role, on the whole, I don't think she's too bad, at least from the games I've both played as her and played against her. Like, I have lost games on her, I've won more games than I've lost on her, but I have still lost games on her. And equally, when the enemy team has a good Zarya player, it hasn't just been an instant loss. It's depended entirely on what the DPS were doing. And now we're getting into the DPS role, with one quick caveat. You'll probably notice there aren't any tanks in S tier, and I can't remember if I touched on this at the start of the video or not. I just don't think at the minute, both last season and this season, there are any tanks deserving of being in S tier, because I, as a former tank main, I just think tank's in kind of a bad place at the minute. Tank only feels impactful when one is better than the other. If one team has a significantly better tank player, that team will win. But if there's not too much difference between the two tanks, the game falls entirely on the DPS and the supports. Tank just kind of feels inconsequential in the current state of the game, and I honestly don't really know how they could fix it. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are plenty of moments where as a tank you will have significant impact within the game, but on the whole, the role just kind of feels stationary. I don't think I've done a particularly great job of explaining that, and I think that is mostly down to the fact that I don't know how I would fix what I personally feel to be the issues with the role. But anyway, that's enough yapping about tank, because we've got DPS to get onto. And starting with Anran, she's going into A tier. Now, I didn't do a particularly great job of showcasing that she's good. Frankly, the two games that I played were back to back. I had got back from work, I wanted to upload a video. I had time for 2 games and then a bit of editing, so that's exactly what I did. Did I play particularly well? No. However, since she's released, not just prior season, but this season, Anran's just been very solid. There is a lot of stuff that you can do with her. She's very good at flanking, but she's also pretty good at playing up close and personal. You also have the dive potential within a dive composition, whilst, you know, simultaneously possessing the ability to play a more poke-like playstyle. And because of that, she's very well rounded, and she also feels like she's got a very good, like, niche space within the game, where she can kind of do a lot of things at the same time. On the whole, her kit's just very solid all around to play as her. And equally, when you're playing against her, it feels solid, but she also doesn't feel like a certain individual does play against. Ashe, A tier, high A tier. I just think Ashe is really good. I mean, you're always going to have that issue with sharpshooters like Ashe. She's good from range. She's fairly solid up close. The dynamite is very, very strong still. Coach gun as well to get away. Ashe is just pretty damn good all around, and she can fit in with most comps. She's very viable on most maps. All around, she's just an A tier character. And now we get to the meat and potatoes. Now we get to the meat and tatties. Bastion, congratulations on your official inauguration into S tier, because by Jove, is this stupid clanker broken. He's partially part of the reason why I don't enjoy playing tank very much anymore. Bastion as a character has one role, you know you do your fun little thing with your little bird and your little weapon, and then you switch into a turret and you just shred anything within your LOS, and he's just very damn good at that at the minute for some reason. I don't know if he got buffed, I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden, this man became a menace. That's part of the reason why Zarya, in my opinion, is below D.Va. If you're having problems with a Zarya, then you just need a Bastion. Because the whole thing with Zarya is she has a bubbles. Not when that fella's around. Literally. Turret configuration. Brrr. Shred through the bubble. She pops another one. Oh, it's gone in 2 seconds. She's dead. Maybe not dead, but she's low. And you don't particularly have to worry about feeding the charge, because if she does poke her head again, then again, just... she's not that much of an issue. Same with pretty much every tank on the list. Domina, minced by Bastion. Winton, minced by Bastion. Hazard, you guessed it. Sig, not so much, but you kind of have to use your grasp when he does use his turret form, unless, you know, your positioning's good enough to be able to go behind cover and him not have LOS on you still. But on certain chokes, that isn't really doable without giving up too much space for them to then win the fight. So pretty much if they've got a Bastion, you have to use your grasp, which forces out probably the most impactful thing within Sig's kit. And I could go on with the rest of the tanks, I could, but I don't feel I have to. Whenever Bastion's good, Bastion's just phenomenal at shredding tanks, and because he's as good as he is at the minute, probably in fact the best DPS in the game, tanks all, you know, go down a peg because of it. My boy Cass, going into A, I'm going to put him below Ashe, but above Anran. Cass is just pretty damn good. I don't think that needs further explanation. The only point where he loses points in, you know, comparison to Ashe is just the fact that you have to be closer. Ashe is better from longer range, and because of the effective range of Cassidy, and, you know, the amount of people, again, with mobility, he's nowhere near Ashe's level. So, next up, we have Echo, who is also going into S tier for the, you know, primary reason that she is as quiet as she is. Echo's always a really solid DPS, very good for dive, very good for flanking, but especially now that she's... I don't know what happened when she became so quiet, but playing as her and playing against her, she's the perfect assassin. Very solid DPS all around, going into S, not above Bastion though. Emre's going into B. His nades, fantastic, really fun to use. His weapon, really fun to use as well. Don't quite like the way it sounds, that's the first thing that irks me with him. But on the whole, not bad. As long as you're pretty close to them. The fall off on his weapon, it genuinely feels like you're giving people paper cuts once they get 40 meters away from you. There's just no point shooting someone unless they're relatively near you with Emre at the minute. So But now he's going in B. If he got a buff to his range, then he'd be going into A. Probably above Cass, in my opinion. But because of, the issue with range, he is going into B. Primarily because of the perks. The blaster perks, where you can pretty much just shoot the tank and become immortal. That's why I'm putting him into B. Because any, main tanks that have to play with the team, if you're playing Emery, you can kind of just shred them with your blaster. Which again, adding into the whole tanks not being in S tier, in my personal opinion, Emery's going into B tier. I am going to pick this up a bit because we've been going for a little bit of a while. It's a new day. I didn't realise quite how much yapping we'd been doing. So we'll try and, speed through the DPS. Freya, I'm putting her into A tier. The thing is, if you see a Freya on the enemy team, it's either a free win or a free loss. Because a really good Freya, there's nothing you can do. And even a mediocre Freya still gets a hell of a lot of value because Freya is very strong. However, she does also take quite a bit of skill to play well, and if the team has someone that's, not particularly good at Freya, then it just is a steamroll. It does feel like a free win. I'm putting her very low A. Frankly, she could even go into B in my, experience with her, or with playing against her. But she is a very solid option in the DPS category, which is why I'm putting her into A. Next up, we've got Genji, and my boy is going into C tier. And I'm also going to come over and make this a little bigger real quick. Lovely. Genji's going into C tier. His blade feels pretty weak, and for a long time that's probably been the most impactful part of his kit. Deflect can be really good, can also be kind of cheeks. There's a lot of people that can bypass it, and again with Zarya, Sim, Echo, Mei. There's also a lot of people being played in the, these sort of higher tiers that have good mobility. It feels a lot harder to go in and dive with Genji, and you don't really want to be playing Genji with your team. You kind of want to be going off doing your own thing. You get value by getting picks, and that's just hard to do at the minute because, again, the mobility changes, the survivability changes even. It just feels kind of cheeks. And Blade, I personally do think needs a bit of a buff. Like, sure, Nano Blade is good, but that's 2 ultimates. It's gonna be good. Without Nano Blade, it just kind of feels like you're not even using a sword. You're just using like a fan or something. Like you're just blowing air at them. He's just kind of which hurts me to say because I really do like playing Genji. Then we have Hanzo, who I'm going to put in B above Emery. I don't think he's quite strong enough to go into A tier, but he's also not bad. And I have a sneaking suspicion that they may have upped the projectile headshot, the projectile sizes, because I've been hitting way more headshots than I should be doing on Hanzo. I mean, if you saw me playing Hanzo 6 months ago and then you saw me playing Hanzo now, it's, different gravy. And again, he's not going up with the others. He's not necessarily as impactful, but he's also not bad. And he could go up into A, but I think the gap between what a Hanzo can do and what a Freya or an Anran can do, actually I'm going to move Freya up a bit, I just think that's what warrants him being in B. But he is still very solid as a DPS. Junkrat. Junk's a hard one. Junk's a hard one. I'm leaning towards C. However, with his projectile speed perk, I'm honestly leaning towards B. And I think I'm going to go low B with Junkrat. The thing with Junk is he's never, like, fantastic. He's, low skill character. However, you can get a lot of value out of his traps. You can get a lot of value out of his mines, especially with the movement. Obviously, you get that one founding Junkrat who's flying up into the air to kill an Echo, who's, traversing the map in ways that have never been seen before. So the thing is, Junkrat can be really strong. However, on average, I do think he's low B, high C, somewhere, falling in around there. I'm also going to make a correction to that, and I'm going to move Malgra above Junker Queen, just because of the two. Unfortunately, sitting there and shooting the tank feels far more viable in my opinion. Mei. Now this I feel is going to be a very controversial placement. However, I'm going to whack Mei in A tier. And quite high in A tier, might I add. Now my feelings towards Mei are that Mei, sort of like Ball and Doom, doesn't really become affected by changes they make to her, unless it's like a big kit change that will, obviously. But season to season, what, changes Mei from being really good to really bad is who is, good at the minute, who's strong at the minute, and what people can do. And the amount of value you can get from Mei Wall in this, current season is insane. Largely due to this guy. If I have the clips, then I'll play him here. But The amount of times I've used Maywall to just deny Catty's ult by catching my teammate, he flies off a little further, tether breaks, you save your teammate, and you waste out an ult. Equally, splitting off the tank with, you know, everyone else that's strong this season, the tank just dies. And the survivability is also a very big thing, just because it's impactful to be alive for longer. You also do have good range with your icicle, and, you know, if someone's being pesky in the backline with your supports, May can deal with them quite well, because you can kind of funnel them into one area, and if it's a tracer, say, your icicle's doing big damage, assuming it's a headshot, but you just aim at head height and shoot it. I've had probably the most value on May that I've ever had whilst playing May within Season 1, or, you know, the new season of Overwatch, which is why she's going into A. And then there's Blizzard, which is just a pretty decent ultimate all around. You can build it really fast, you can usually get some really good value with it, and it's probably one of the best ultimates to have in overtime, just because you can kind of deny an area for 10 seconds, or, you know, risk getting frozen and dying. Then we have Pharah, who's going into C above Genji. Pharah's going there solely because a lot of hit scans are pretty good. So Pharah's just going to suffer, because if a lot of people are playing hit scans, then a lot of people are going to be playing characters that can very easily deal with you. However, with that being said, for some reason there are, you know, seemingly a vast number of people that, you know, haven't learned that if you stand near an edge and there's a Pharah, she can boop you off it. That's probably just a plat thing, but it's you know, it's a bit alarming, frankly, to see 3 of my teammates waddling towards a ledge when they have a Pharah. Because she has a boot. Connect the dots. I mean, I did it the other day. If I have the clip again, I'll show it to show you what I mean. But there was a Roadhog just waiting at the bridge on Lijiang Tower. That's where it was. The actual tower. He was waiting at the bridge on the other side, trying to hook people off. I was playing Pharah. I just, you know, aimed my boop at the wall behind him. He went flying off. Unfortunately, they did have a life weaver, and the guy was pretty much on janitor duty the whole game, just grabbing people that had booped, which wasn't appreciated. Very well played to you, sir, but not appreciated. But that is, you know, why she's going into C. A lot of hit scans, not great. However, she is still fairly decent. If hit scans weren't really good, she would be maybe high B, even low A. But hit scans are very good, so Pharah's bad. Reaper. Reaper's going into the top of A. He's not S tier. He isn't. However, the amount of value you get from just walking 3 inches away from their tank and just going value. And, you know, you can just go into the backline, get a few picks, get out really easily with your teleport or your fade. I don't know what happened to him, but Reaper feels really, really strong at the minute. And again, part of that is the whole shredding tank at the minute. That is, you know, the meta. Reaper's very good at that. But he's also just very good at getting picks for, you know, some reason. And that's in spite of all the mobility changes. I don't know, you know, what changed in Reaper players' heads, but I've just been seeing him be used far more effectively. And when playing him myself, he does feel more like, you know, a threat. And I also think that his volley, the long-range double shot at once, that definitely really helps with him, because you get a bit of range through that. But Reaper does feel really good at the minute, hence why he's going into the top of A for the DPS. And then Sojourn. I think Sojourn's been S tier since she came out. Frankly, I'm a little sick of it. She's very easy to win on. I don't think she's particularly hard to play. It just kind of sucks because she's been so strong for so long, and she's just not particularly fun to play against. She's fun to play as, but the railgun's still really good, especially with a Mercy Pocket. The disruptor shot is just stupid. I mean, it does so much damage. And, you know, you might only be in it for half a second. That's still like 30 damage, 50 damage for some reason. You know, that's more than a Genji shuriken, and it takes him 30 seconds to throw 3 of those. She's just very, very strong. And she has been for a very long time. She's going into S tier. She's probably always going to stay in S tier. And again, I do think, somewhat like Mauga, she could do with having, you know, never been added. Just because she just feels oppressive to play against. That said, if you do want some free wins, just play Sojourn, and once you learn how to use it, yeah, you know, you can kind of just cruise your way through. Soldier, I'm gonna put high B, which is, you know, a little controversial. The first big change that he got, that at least for the way I play Soldier was a huge nerf, was the Hitting rockets no longer reloads 15 ammo, and don't get me wrong, that was ridiculously strong, but it was a nerf. And as for the, hit scans, Ash is better than Soldier at the minute. Ass is better than Soldier at the minute. Bastion is just a menace at the minute. And with those being better hit scans, I just don't think there's any reason to play Soldier over, Ash or Bastion, which kind of hurts. Because, I am a Soldier main on DPS. I do love my boy Soldier. However, at the minute, I just do think he's B tier. Because there's better hit scan options within DPS. Sombra, going into D. I do not know why she's permabanned. She is cheeks. They did give her a perk where, you hack something and you get 3 extra seconds of invisibility. So as long as you're running around health packs, you can kind of be perma-invis again. But she just is cheeks. She just is. I mean, picking off the backline, there's just so many better characters now for doing that. And you can't exactly play Sombra 76 because you're too squishy. And she's not very good from range. I think since the rework, she has permanently been kind of cheeks. But this season especially, she's very cheeks. And again, I just don't get why people are banning her. I can't fathom it. She's not good. There's certain people on this list that deserve to be banned far more. And yeah, Sombra's going into D tier. Symmetra going into S. I don't know what they did to Sim. I don't. But she just feels like a menace to society. I mean, Sim has always been a sleeper pick because people don't play Sim a lot. Like, there are not a lot of Sim players. But when you get a good Sim player, you know it because the game is cushy. The game is sweet. The game is relaxing because Sim's just very, very good and she's very high value, especially in, this season. The extra turret, just getting that little bit of extra damage in whilst your team's poking. If you've got a poke comp, you got a brawl comp, it's right in, and that beam is a literal laser. And I don't mean like laser because it is a laser, but it just does so much damage. It's just really good. And the teleporter's always been fantastic. You can just teleport into the back of their team, zap at their supports for a bit, things getting a little dicey, I'ma teleport out. Things getting not so dicey anymore, I'ma teleport back in. Sim's just really good. She is S. I think people need to realise how good she is and play her. A bit like Brig. Brig's really good. Just not a lot of people play her. Cobble Joan. Cob's a hard one. Because I'm going to let you in on a little secret here. When I play Torb, my entire game plan is how many people can I kill with my hammer. Usually it's about 2 or 3, and usually my deaths are 5 or 6. But it's a hell of a lot of fun running around with a hammer and whacking people. With that being said, let's get into, actually playing him as a character and not running around like an idiot with a hammer. Torb's decent. He's not bad. Your turret can get quite a bit of value because at least in, gold, plat, people for some reason just don't like shooting turrets. It's the same with Alari Pylon. It's there. Break it. No. This thing's moving. I want to shoot that. You'll get more value by breaking that. Yes, I know, but this thing's moving. I want to shoot that. Make it make sense. Turret, at the end of the day, you can get quite a bit of value. Molten Core, not great, but it's also not the worst ult in the game. I think Torb's B, to be honest. I'm going to put him below Hanzo. I'm going to put him below Emre. I'm not going to put him below Junk because you can do very good damage, and especially if you're using Overload with the buckshot from your scattergun. Torb does some very good damage to the tank, which you'll notice has been a pretty big factor this tier list, just because from the games I've played, the most effective thing this season, last season, the past few seasons, has just been to kill the tank. And Torb with his scattergun's very good at that. He's decent from range, albeit hard to aim with. On the whole, Torb's pretty good. He's going into B tier. Tracer. Do I want 6 DPS in S tier? I think I do. Tracer's very good. Tracer's usually very good. However, as someone that plays quite a bit of Tracer, she does feel a little squishy. And again, with people having a lot of mobility, she's kind of lost her standing a little bit. You can still do so much on Tracer, and especially with the perks that she has. The overhealth from Recall is really great, and the further blink distance, that's, very nice to have. Tracer's very solid all around. However, I personally, from the games I've played, both as and against Tracers, I just think the other 4 do far more when it comes to getting picks, having impact on the fights. Tracer just feels a little weak compared to the others. She doesn't feel weak compared to anyone below her. She feels very strong, in fact. But compared to the others in S tier currently, you just get more value from them, which is why they're higher. Vendetta. Now, I hate her for 2 reasons. Firstly, she's kind of stupid. She's pretty OP. That isn't the main contributor to the fact that I hate her, though. That isn't it. What is the main contributor is the fact that Blizzard expect me to believe that this stupid, silly little lady could beat my glorious king. It's not feasible. She might as well have a toothpick in comparison to my boy Doom. Like, aside from that, though, very strong. Insane movement. The amount of ways you have to just get up on people and start swinging your sword at them is ridiculous. Like, you can hop over buildings. I've done that on Icon Wall. First point, hop over the building, use me dash, and then I'm in the back line and I'm dunking on them. And there's nothing they can do because there's nothing that there is to do when you've got a Vendetta in your face, except use your cooldowns. And even then, in Vendetta's case, probably won't be enough. Vendetta feels like Venture on steroids. That is what she feels like, because with Venture, you get out your cooldowns, you get a pick, that's your value. Vendetta, you force out cooldowns, you get 17 picks, and then, you're still cushy because she's just Vendetta. I mean, I get it. She's a new character. She's the face of Talon. Please, nerf her. I'm getting Sojourn flashbacks. Sojourn, Season 1. Nuts. Still nuts. Admittedly, not as oppressive. Why is that, I wonder? Because we've got Vendetta. And I unfortunately think Vendetta is going to be another case of perma S tier and just permanently very strong, which I don't like, because A, as mentioned, don't like Vendetta. B, I don't think it's healthy for the game. And again, C, she just doesn't beat Doom. She just doesn't. She's a fraud. Anyway, Venture, I'm actually gonna put. I'm going to put her in A tier. I'm going to put her above Freya and Anran. I'm going to put her below May. The thing with Venture is you have very high survivability. You can quite, easily get picks. But by far the best thing about, Venture is her ability to force out cooldowns and important ones and that. Pretty much the way I play Venture, if I can get a pick, great, I'll do it. If I don't think I can get a pick, then my priority becomes which cooldowns can I get out that would have a massive impact on a fight. Usually, I can get out a nade from Ana. I can maybe even get out a Suzu from Kiri if there's 2 people coming out from spawn. At which point, it's my team's turn to go in. I can be a bit of a menace to the backline, but because they're missing, some form of important cooldown that would have impact in the fight, that is where Venture gets her value. She can, get picks very easily. She can also move around very easily. She can control height quite well. I wouldn't say control height, more so pressure height, and it's quite difficult to take a Venture away from somewhere she wants to be, or they want to be, sorry. I actually didn't really play a lot of Venture until recently, and they are incredibly fun. I love playing them. I do. And you can get a lot of value. And they do feel quite strong. The only reason she ain't going any higher is because her range is piddly. Granted, she does have the kit to go in to her optimal range, but it's still kind of piddly. And if they've got a Flappy Bird or a Flappy Bird Jr., then it's kind of hard to kill them unless you're dashing up into the air and just clobbering them and shooting them in the face. But I wouldn't advise that, because whilst it may feel and look very cool, you could, have better value just from using it elsewhere. And finally, we have Widowmaker, who I will be putting into A tier. Widow's pretty damn good. The thing with playing Widow is whenever someone on your team locks in Widowmaker, the fights then become 4v5. And your value from Widowmaker is ensuring that both fights are always a 4v5. For example, both teams start fighting, you as Widow get a pick on the Mercy. you've done your job, because it's now a 4v5 and you have got a more pivotal pick from it being a Mercy than the enemy team would from picking you off as Widowmaker. That doesn't mean your job's done. If you can get another pick, go for it. Even if it's just headshotting the tank, go for it. You still get value. But primarily as Widow, what you want to be aiming for is making every fight a 4v4. The other value Widow has is, for some reason, when you play a Widow and you do alright, at least one or two of their team are going to swap and just spend the rest of the game hawking your ass down, which is really good, honestly, because, again, you're still fulfilling your primary role of making it a 4v4. The reason she's going into A and not B is because, well, two reasons. Firstly, there's a lot of the maps in the map pool at the minute that are very good for Widow. Havana, Blizzard World, Shambali, Circuit especially. There's just a lot of maps in the pool, well, not a lot, but quite a few maps in the map pool that are good for Widow. And pair that with the fact that she now gets her piercing 125% damage shot, she's a bit of a menace. So she's going into A tier. And now we move on to support. I've got big issues with some of these people, I do. But before we get into supports, I want to make something very clear. And that is the fact that their name is support, not healer. Because the amount of times that you get people complaining because, oh, our supports aren't doing as much healing as yours, that's why we're losing. No. 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 Support means doing whatever would be most impactful to help your team win. For example, Genji pops his blade. Oh, heal me, heal me. No. If I'm Anna, I'm going to try and sleep him. And if I sleep him, don't wake him up. Please. If they've got a Tracer, I'm going to play Brig and keep my other support up. Oh, you're not doing enough healing. No, I'm keeping Anna alive, who can then do the healing, and I'm also keeping one of their DPS in check. But the point is, support is not a role that's focused on healing. It's a role that's focused on providing as much impact to the fight as you can, whilst also having the ability to heal. And in the current season, it's a lot more impactful to get a pick than it is to keep someone else up. For example, if they have two supports in the back line and you notice that they're both low and you're on, Anna, Iari, anyone like that, it will be more impactful for the overall fight if you can pick both of them off, or even just one of them off, than it would be to heal, your soldier who's at half health complaining that he needs healing. If you position back, give it 2 seconds for your support to pop off, then they'll heal you. But their job isn't to babysit you. Their job is to provide impact for whatever it is the team's trying to do. And now that we've got that out of the way, because I feel like there's so many people that need to understand that. If you're an Anna player, bear in mind I play Anna quite a lot on support, I dislike you very openly. And you're probably wondering, what have we ever done to you? Doom is my most played tank. Enough said. You go into A tier. Anna is very good. Nano, as always, very solid ultimate. Sleep, incredibly impactful ability. Biotic Nade, especially with the global nerf, or kind of buff, I guess, to all damage types giving reduced healing. It's just very good. It just is, because you can, increase the healing that your team are getting, which pretty much negates that, and then some, and equally, using it to anti, be it their DPS or their support, whoever it is, you just get value. And not only that, Anna does very good healing, but she can also do huge damage. So she is going into A. She's not going into S, because I don't think she's quite as good as a couple of the other supports on this list. However, she's very, very damn good. Baptiste, also going into A. Bap is just pretty damn strong. He's good for damage, very good for healing. I have had probably Moira level numbers on Baptiste. And the thing with Moira is just a stat farmer. I don't personally feel like Moira is ever very impactful, but she can pump out massive numbers. That doesn't equate to value, by the way. That does not equate to value. Just because you've got, 30k healing, that doesn't necessarily mean that you were providing value within team fights. However, Bap can do insane numbers with both damage and healing, but his utility is probably the best thing about him. Firstly, you've got his shift. Very good if you're getting dived. Also very good if you're in the midst of the team during a team fight and you want to get a pick on someone else, but your team's looking a little rough. You pop that, push the brave. Same with Immortality Field, the amount of ults now that you can just kind of negate by using it. And Window. Window's still very, very good. It does depend where you use it, what angles you use it, and, you know, if the enemy team have brains or not. But overall, Baptiste is very good. Brig. I am so tempted to put Brig into S tier. However, I think overall, I am going to put her into A tier. And I'm going to put her below Anna. Brig is criminally underrated. However, the thing with Brig is it all depends on the current meta. And, you know, with these being the strong DPS, Brig doesn't feel great. I also physically can't bring myself to put her in B or below her, just because she is very, very good. And if you do get a good Brig in a meta or a map that works well for Brig, game's gone. Because she's just very, very good. Yari, S tier, easiest decision of my life. Very good healing, but most importantly, insane damage. I can keep up with the DPS with Illari in terms of damage output, whilst also getting insane value from Pylon, because A, you can either whack it at the back with your backline, someone tries to dive them, they're getting the heal on from Pylon. Captive Sun, very good. A Boop, again, very good. Just, you know, if you want to play support, she's who I'd recommend you play, and I don't feel like I've done a particularly great job of doing it justice there. But Yari is insanely strong this season. Jetpack Cat, the guy's a menace. And I love him. I do. But he is probably the most annoying character in the game. And he'd be very easy to fix. Because the biggest problem with Cat at the minute, like Echo, is how quiet he is. Just have him, you know, purr every couple of seconds. Have his jetpack make a bit more noise. Hell, he's a cat. Have him break something every 5 seconds. Give him a cup on his little control desk. Have him knock it off. That'd be a solution. But they just... I cannot put into words how much fun it is to assassinate people on the cat. And I cannot put into words how good he is at assassinating people. And then you've got his catnap. People are like, oh, there's nowhere I can throw him off the map here. How am I ever going to get value out of my ultimate? You don't need to throw them off the map. You go in, you kidnap someone, you bring them to your team, and then it's 5-on-1. No one's winning that. No one. And even your healing burst, that does stupid amounts of healing, and you can use a perk to make it offensive. Which just means that, you know, they're shooting you. Oh, I've got a button. Guess what? Can't kill me now, and I'm doing even more damage to you. Cat's just insane. Very, very strong. Do think Cat will be getting nerfed into the ground soon, but until then, I will enjoy playing him and the menace that he is. She. I think she's a she, actually. Juno. Also going into S, I'll be at the bottom. Juno's really good. Juno is very, very strong, and he does very good on both sides. Again, with it being support, you have the mobility boost to the entire team. You have the ability to very easily engage and disengage with the backline with one of their DPS. Again, if someone dives you, you can quite easily get away. Got very good healing, and you have your auto-aim projectiles, which are just very, very strong, albeit for healing your own team or dealing a bit of poke damage to theirs. Juno's just very, very good. And then Kiri. If Kiri didn't have Suzu, I'd be putting her in B tier. Kiri does have Suzu. She's going into A tier. It feels like she just has immortality on a 6-second cooldown, and it's just kind of broken. And you know, there are going to be Kiri players in the comments saying, oh, it's not every 6 seconds. Actually, it takes precision and skill to use it. I play Kiri. I like playing Kiri. But the amount of stuff I can do with Suzu, I know it's not 6 seconds, but it feels like it. They throw a Diva Bomb. Oh no, it's about to... We're fine. You know? Zarya's put a Graviton Surge. Oh, Bastion's ulting, whatever, we're like... I'm fine. Mauga's got a Cage. No, he doesn't. Yeah, Kiri's just kind of ridiculous. Not Kiri herself, Suzu. She also does very, very high damage if you can hit your headshots with her. I can't, which is probably why I'm low SR on her. But she is just a very solid support. And the biggest difference, the biggest thing that sets her apart for me from the rest of the supports is that she kind of just gets a few lives for free. For Suzu, basically a second life. Teleport, basically a second life. And if you use them in conjunction, you can go in, do your own thing. Oh no, I'm low. Suzu. Oh no, I'm low. Teleport. I'm just Kushti. I don't think you can punish Kiriko for being Kiriko. And she's just quite good. She's quite good indeed. However, she ain't going into S because she ain't that good. Luiwi. Oh, Weaver's a hard one. Weaver I'm going to reserve the right to come back to. For now, he's going into B tier. I personally think that Tree is top 3 support ults in the game. Tree is a ridiculous ult. Weaver can do very good healing, and his life grip is incredibly valuable. However, I just personally think that unless you have optimized Weaver gameplay to a T, there's no point to play Weaver at the minute over, you know, most of the other support characters. I like playing Weaver. I enjoy playing Weaver. I do think I can get substantially more value from picking anyone above him, though. Am I going to stop playing him? No, because his ult is fantastic, and depending on their comp, life grip can be a game changer. But compared to the others, he's just not quite on the same level. Lucio, he's going into C. Firstly, he got the boot nerf by 1 second added to the cooldown. Some of you might not think that's very big. It is very big. Lucio's had the same boot cooldown for 9 years. 8 years? In either case, it hasn't changed for donkey's years, and they nerfed that. The best part of Lucio is now the speed boost, because he's healing whilst alright. People just do too much damage for Lucio's healing to feel consequential. And again, even with speed boost, you know, you've got Cat with Tether who can just effectively do that better. You've got Juno's speed boost, which again, very, very effective. He's nowhere near as impactful as the others, and his survivability, which was his saving grace, is, you know, not as great as it once was. And I already know there's going to be some people here like, oh, but this person never dies on Lucio. If we were to do that, frankly, everyone on this list could be S tier, because if you put, you know, Doom in the hands of Zebra, S tier. You put him in the hands of a bronze player, D tier. You give Ram to the best Ram player in the world, he's gonna look S tier. But overall, in the current state of the game, not including that, you know, one outlier who's insane at that character, Lucio C tier. And that is where he's staying. Oh, this is gonna upset some people. So sit down in your chair. Let me tell you about Mercy. She's an enabler. Similar to my stance on Widow, where Widow being, you know, one less person in the team fight, Mercy counts as half. Not because she herself is half another character, but because she gives that half to another character. What I'm trying to say, albeit rather poorly, Mercy empowers someone else, however, feels pretty weak herself. If I was looking at this from the standpoint of who Mercy is empowering, who Mercy is enabling to do better, then I'd probably be leaning towards high B, maybe at a stretch, low A. But I'm going to put her in C tier. I just don't think that Mercy as herself is very good. She just doesn't really feel great to play, and I think you could do far more in the current way that the game's played on pretty much any other support. Which is why, unfortunately, Mercy is going into C tier. Mizuki is going high B, going above Lifeweaver. I don't think Mizuki's bad. I don't think he's good either. And Mizuki is pretty much the character I've played on support since he came out. I figured out the first game I played as him, I could bounce my projectile off walls. It was a wrap. I was already going to be playing him. There's a few things he does quite well. Mizuki's really good at preventing dives, which firstly is just very nice to have on support, because some of the older supports, Anna, Bap, once someone, you know, dives you, it feels kind of hard to get away. Mizuki, on the other hand, with his chain, can just put them on a leash. And once they do get chained, provided your teammates are somewhat competent, they are just dead. His hat? Probably my favourite thing about him. For some reason, just seeing it ping off 3 people. Really good. However, let's start with his ultimate. His ult's fantastic, providing you can time it to prevent an ult from the enemy team. If not, you get what? 5 seconds? and then it's gone. You can kind of just do a reset, or maybe even 2/3 of a reset before it goes. And I don't quite understand why Kiri's ult is 10 seconds or 20 seconds, whatever it is. Feels like an eternity when you're in the game, yet Mizuki's comparatively is very short. I also don't want to put him into A tier because of the range of his healing aura. You pretty much have to be holding the tank's hand to actually provide them any healing outside of the healing caster, which is a very dangerous position to be in as a support. And I'm saying the tank there just because the tank, for the most part, is the one taking the most of the damage at the minute. DPS works the same though. If you want to be healing your DPS and your hat's on cooldown, you have to be pretty much holding the hand, and that is just not a great position to be in. I think it does need a slight buff. However, with that being said, there are a lot of times where a Mizuki, as long as they don't die, is probably the most impactful support, because he can do a very good amount of damage and get picks while simultaneously healing. I personally think he's a better Lucio. Frankly, I do think he could move up to A tier, but I just think that the others have a little bit of an edge on value of him, to where he's on the cusp of moving into A tier. He just needs that little bit extra to be on their level. Moira, I'm putting into C. Again, stat farmer. She can do good damage, she can do good healing, but it's all little chips. It's never too high impact. However, with that being said, that would probably have landed her into B tier had it not had the global changes. And I haven't really been over the, subclass bonuses, because most of them I don't really care about. Like, don't get me wrong, the fast reload is insane on the DPS. Tank, I don't really notice it. Other DPS, other than the fast reload, don't really notice it. I don't think they're too impactful. I think the most impactful change was all damage giving, negative healing, reduced healing amount threshold, which has made a lot of the supports feel a lot weaker in terms of their healing output. However, Moira, in my opinion, is the most affected because she doesn't do instant healing. Anna, for example, you shoot them, that's 70 healing pretty much instantly. It's not instant, but it's near enough. That with these little exploding ball things, they're instant once they hit. Moira's spray, on the other hand, is not instant. You hit them, and over the course of 2 or 3 seconds, it will heal for X amount. But because of the reduction to the healing output from taking damage, whoever she is healing feels like it takes that much longer than it would if there was another support. And I don't think that is the perfect explanation for the point I'm trying to convey, but I do think that is why Moira's suffering as much as she is. She isn't bad by any means, but she's not good. He just isn't. Hence the C. Next up, my boy Wu Yang. He is going into A tier, and I'm actually going to put him above Kiriko. Wu Yang's just kind of insane. He does such good damage. He is so impactful within a team fight, and he is one of the few supports that actually feels like you can play up close and personal within the team fight without being in too much danger. Not just because of the amount of damage he does do, but also the versatility within his kit. Your rushing torrent, you can use that to both engage or disengage, and then his ultimate. His ultimate's probably the thing that sets him above Kiriko in my opinion, because of the amount of space you can take by using it. Tank primarily is about taking space and controlling space. And at the minute, because of how fast Tank gets shredded, it kind of feels like that isn't as effective, or Tank feels less effective because it's a lot harder to take the space now. It relies a lot more heavily on your DPS. That is probably the best way of saying it. Wu Yang's ultimate kind of does the opposite, because you can use that to take the space, and depending on how you use it, it can even win you a team fight. It's just a very strong ult. He does very good damage. He does very decent healing. On the whole, Wu Yang is just very good, and that is why he's going in A tier. I don't quite think he's on the same level as the 3 supports within S tier, but he is very good. And last but certainly least, we have Zenyatta. Now, Zen's kind of a difficult one. I have openly disliked Zen for quite a long time. Because Discord Orb is an ability that was fine in 6v6, has no place in 5v5. It is just too impactful. And the changes that they have made have definitely made it feel a lot less oppressive to play against. But Discord Orb is still, in my opinion at least, one of, if not the most impactful ability that anyone in the game has. I mean, the best way to use Discord, especially at the minute, slap it on the tank, watch them evaporate. But even if that doesn't work, whack them on the DPS or whack them on the supports, just watch them disappear. The amount of DPS in S tier that can just do insanely high levels of damage output, pair that with increased damage through Discord Orb, and then add the fact that Zen is just very, very good at DPSing, you have yourself a very strong support. And he is going above Anna solely for the reason that he is very impactful at the minute. And on top of that, the other thing I've noticed, which I am actually going to attribute again to the global, taking damage negates healing change. I am going to attribute it to that. But I do think Zen's healing output has tremendously gone up since that, because it can, permanently be on. And that might be why Wu Yang feels like he does such decent healing, because you can just stick it on the tank, leave it on, and you're chilling. I don't know. Zen just feels very, very good this season. And that might be that change. It might just be that because of the meta, or, whatever change it is, Zen does feel really good this season. So that is where he's going. And that, my friends, is my Overwatch tier list for the first season. If I had to put a tank into S tier, it would be D.Va, but as mentioned, I do not think that any of the tanks, because of the current meta, deserve to be in S tier. I also think there's a little bit of an imbalance between, A and B and C and D, and you might notice that too. But on the whole, excluding this top row, I do think the balancing has been quite good. Obviously, Sojourn is never going to be included in a statement of Overwatch's balancing being good, because she's been S tier for 3 years. But on the grand old scheme of things, I do think this season is pretty well balanced. I think it's unfortunate that tank is in the state it's in, and I am partially biased there because I was a tank main for so long. I would still love to play tank, but it just feels like a chore. It doesn't feel as enjoyable to play tank than it does either of the other roles. The other thing you might have noticed is that there's a lot of supports in S and A tier, and that is, in my opinion, actually a good thing because of the state of tank. I think there's been a power creep within support, which could have been somewhat problematic. And I think if tank does get a buff, or when some of the heroes that are strong get changes, for example, if Bastion and Reaper go completely into the ground, if Symmetra goes into the ground, then I think we're going to hit a stage where supports are going to need global nerfs, because by all accounts, support could be very, very strong in comparison to the other two. The reason I don't think it feels it yet is because of how bad tank is currently. I think they have to prioritize trying to keep the tank up more because of how fast the tank can die now. And I think once that changes, more and more value will be gotten on support from getting picks instead of, doing anything in regard to healing the team. And again, they are supports, they are not healers, but healing is necessary in a team-based shooter. And if support becomes too strong at damaging, there is no reason for them to heal, at which point we face an even bigger issue with the game. Overall, this is my tier list. This is a pretty good representation of where I think everyone lies within Overwatch Season 1. Obviously, if you disagree, feel free to leave any comments in the, down below. Let me know your thoughts. If you think this character should be up here or this character should be down here, let me know why. I am not the voice of reason within Overwatch. There are some placements that, with some convincing, I might agree with. But this, objectively, is how I think the current characters fall into a tier list for Overwatch. So, I hope you've enjoyed. If you did, please consider leaving a like on the video. And otherwise, I will catch you later. Goodbye.